Um, all right, well, welcome everybody to our January Austin Tug. My name is Chris Monahan. I'll be your MC today. Happy New Year, happy 2023. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday break and the New Year started off great for you all. Feels like it's already February for me, but it's a new year, and with New Year, we have a lot of new events planned for you. So we are working really hard to firm up our schedule for the next 6 months to 9 months. We've got a lot of in-person events planned, some happy hours. So really looking forward to bringing you a lot of great events this year. As usual, I want to thank all the people that helped bring the Austin Tug together. And that is our Tug Advisory Council. All the folks here work a lot of hours to go ahead and meet every other week to plan these sessions and plan the events for you guys to make sure that we have a great community here in the Austin Tug. If you are interested in joining our advisory council, please reach out to one of us. So if we're looking for folks that have special skills in marketing or event planning, or maybe you just like posting a lot on social media, we definitely could use all ideas and all help. And we're actually having a special get together here in Austin with the advisory council. We're doing a dinner here in a couple weeks. So if you're interested in joining our group, please let us know, and we can go ahead and coordinate, and you can meet up with us in person. So we got a great event planned today for you. Here's sort of our high-level agenda. First, I'll go over some meeting announcements and talk about some of the upcoming events. Then we'll have our featured speaker, Neil Richards, who's the EMEA BI lead over at JLL. He's also a Tableau visionary, has been for the past 4 years. And he's going to give a great presentations on questions in dataviz and how curiosity will help your creativity. And it's really about blending and breaking the dataviz rules so you can have creative designs. It's really insightful, and it's from his new book. So please stay tuned, and definitely don't want to miss that. And then after that, we'll do our breakout session again, where it's Ask Anyone Anything. So if you have any questions around Tableau, anything at all, from server to adoption to training to Tableau desktop to calcs, please bring them to this breakout session. We'll hold that after our featured speaker. Homer and I will be emceeing that event as well. Now, as a reminder, our meeting format is a live meeting. This is live, so please respect all Zoom etiquette. You are encouraged to share your video. So there's a gallery view too. So if you want to see everyone's faces, go ahead and switch it to that. As we have our speakers presenting, please go ahead and be on mute. But we do want this to be interactive. So use the chat window down below and post any questions that you have. If you have any questions specific to our speaker, go ahead and directly send those to Homer, and he can go ahead and we'll gather those and ask those during the quick Q&A presentation at the end of the presentation. So I'll also go ahead and put a link in our survey there. It helps make our events a lot better. So please go ahead and take that quick 1-minute survey just so we can get your feedback. So general housekeeping and announcements. We have February Tug planned next month. It's going to be on a Wednesday this time, so stay tuned. It's switching from Thursday to Wednesday, but it will be in person. So it's a hybrid event, but we will be doing it in person again in downtown Austin at the Tableau offices down there on Congress. So we'll send out an invite that has more details later, but if you're in the Austin area, please come join us in person. We'd love to see you. We'd love to talk with you, meet with you, join our community there. We've done it a couple times in last year. It's been a great event. So please join. And we're also going to have a happy hour. It's going to be across the street upstairs at Caroline's. It's a great event. Upstairs at Caroline's is a great venue in case you've never been there. We will have free food and drinks. That'll be from 5 to 7 o'clock. So again, please join us. Please come. As I mentioned, free food and happy hour. So you don't want to miss that. And then we're going to have our March Tug on March 15th, and that will go back to being virtual again. So that's sort of what we have planned as far as Tug events coming up in the next month or so. One big announcement, if you haven't seen this on LinkedIn or social media, Tableau Conference has been announced, and Tableau Conference will be May 9th through 11th. So it's 3 days of fun in Las Vegas. More specifics are coming out soon, but mark your calendars if you want to go and be in person. If not, it's going to be virtual again, so you can still catch it over the web. But mark your calendars, and you don't want to miss that. So let's go ahead and jump to our featured speaker here. As I mentioned, Neil Richards. He's the lead EMEA BI lead over at JLL. He's been in the Tableau community for a long time, and he's a Tableau visionary. And he does a lot of guest speaking and blogging. So if you haven't seen him, you're in for a treat. He has a new book called Questions in dataviz, and it's out on Amazon. So if you haven't seen it, please check it out. It's definitely a good read. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Neil.
All right, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can all see stuff now. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you so much. I'm just excited to be here. It's a shame I can't be in Austin, because I did enjoy being in Austin the last time I was there. I think I may have even been to upstairs at Caroline's before. It looks strangely familiar. It brings back memories, and I'm excited to be the warm-up for Brittany Rosenau, who's going to speak to you next month as well. She is awesome and talented, and you will get a chance to see her up on stage in unconventional if you are lucky enough to go. But thank you again, and we'll go into my talk now, which is all about how curiosity will help your creativity. Usually at this point, I rely on people's curiosity to think, I wonder what that QR code is for. But now you've given me the introduction that will take you to the page for my book, and this is linked around my book. And the whole premise of my book, Questions in dataviz, is that everything I kind of did in my dataviz journey and continue to do, I like to think it always involves asking questions at different points, and asking questions about things that maybe just hadn't occurred to me before, or something I hadn't come across in my dataviz journey. And so let's start now. In this book, I put it into 3 different sections, and everything is a question, and I put it into first questions, challenging questions, and idea questions. Now, first questions might be around stuff that you probably know, stuff around basic principles, things that you will probably have learned in picking up Tableau and using it in BI. But it maybe takes them just a little bit further than you'd realize, or might add a few extra questions to ask and consider. Challenging questions, I then pick up things which are, they're not really so much challenging, but they're more unusual. So maybe you won't go to the common basic principles as such, but it'll just be perhaps something a little bit more unusual that you might want to think about, or might challenge how you've done things in the past. And then idea questions are more things which have then resulted in me doing something unusual, doing something new, doing something that emulates someone that I might look up to, and doing it in my own particular way. So with that in mind, I've tried to sort of split this talk into those kind of 3 sections as well, just to give you an idea of that process, and an idea of the kind of things that you'll come up with. All right, so my first question, or my first basic section, is what's in a color? Apart from the letter U, which might be strange to some of you, but what's in a color? And I mean, I think everyone should learn best principles of color, or good practices anyway. And this is kind of a summary of some good practices, and it's not all of them, but it's the kind of things that you will learn, and it's best to take notice of. So we use color sparingly, really, don't we? We reduce saturation unless we've got a highlight color, something like that. Keep color palettes down to not too many colors. And there's lots of accessibility things that we might learn, and in particular, we soon learn about red and green and the difficulties of accessibility and colorblind. And these are all very well, and they're absolutely things that you should bear in mind. But as I sort of, even as I started my dataviz journey, I soon sort of learned some other things. And it sort of starts with a story, and this was years ago, before I even did data visualization, my new career. I worked in a market research company, and I was a head of a team And my first job, or my job, was to give out these desk diaries. This was back before we arranged everything online and scheduled and things like this. We put our deadlines into physical diaries like this, desk diaries. Now, believe me, they didn't have 2023 on back in the day. I think it probably even began with a 1, whatever year this was. This was taking it back a bit. But I had a team. I had a team of 8, and I handed most of them around. And some were red, some were blue, some were black. And I just had one guy left. And I didn't deliberately leave him to last, but maybe I subconsciously did, because he was a little bit more imposing. He was older than me. He was pretty forthright in his views. And I don't know, he was the kind of person I would usually leave things till last. And I sidled up to him and I said, there you go. And I gave him the last one, which was a nice red diary. And he looked at me like quite scarily. He looked up at me. No, well, actually, he looked down at me. He was about 6'8", and he shook his head and he went, no. And he handed it back. I walked off with my tail between my legs. I did not know what I'd done. And the team around were looking at me as if to go, oh, he's made a rookie mistake. I can't believe he's done that. And here is a clue as to the reason. My friend, the guy in my team, he was from Liverpool. There are 2 football teams in Liverpool. And if you like football, soccer, you might think of it, you support one team and you hate anything to do with the other team. This guy, he supported Everton. Everton are blue. You don't give him anything red, that's Liverpool. And now let's run it. He never wears red. He doesn't own anything red. Why did I not know that before? This is a color association that I knew, but I didn't know how important it was to him. And it turns out, you know, this is Liverpool. This is Liverpool last year. There's a charity Santa fun run on Liverpool docks. This is how people dress up as Santa in Liverpool. Mostly red, but a few people who aren't going anywhere near red. They have to be blue. And so that people are passionate about the colors in just different communities, different reasons, all these things that you just might not realize. So we have sort of color associations. I put this slide together and it kind of went round in circles a bit, because Tableau does orange and blue, but it has these other associations, hot and cold. And very often I think, well, if in orange and blue, what's good, what's bad, what's up, what's down? And it's not immediately obvious. You think of you think of the red-green palette, which again we try and avoid, but you think of green as sort of go and red as stop. So is red your not so good color? Is blue your not so good color because it's cold? It's not really immediately obvious. So there are some color associations which is difficult to try and determine whether your audience will pick up on them or not. There's some, and many of you might have seen this. This original is from the South China Morning Post, and it was a visualization all about the toll of violence in Iraq. All sorts of things used here. The downward bar chart makes it look like a trickle, if you like. The deep red color, it emulates blood, and the harsh font. Everything here says, look what the toll of violence has been in Iraq. But then you make a few changes, and this was what's proposed by Andy Cotgreave, who many of you will know from Tableau. What if you turn it around, turn it upside down? What if you make it a more pleasant font and a more optimistic headline? What if you change the color to a soothing blue? All right, we've made a few design changes here, but it's exactly the same thing turned upside down. I mean, look, it is the same chart turned upside down, but color is one of those things that can really change the visceral reaction we get to a chart. Here we have a lady looking at the stock market charts, and many of our reactions here would be, look at that sea of green. She should be really pleased, because doesn't that mean everything is going up and there's just a few reds that are not performing so well? But then if you look closer, it's actually the other way around. All the greens have minus numbers. All the greens are stocks going down, and the reds the few of them are stocks going up, and we still have the sort of the middling ones in orange. And then we see that this lady is from China, and there are the cultural association of up and down, or good and bad, of red and green is not only different, but it's totally reversed between Western countries such as the US and UK, and China. In China, red is considered a lucky color. Brides get married in red. And so all the different associations are so different. We see here, this is from Information is Beautiful. The white may not show up brilliantly on your screen, so, but in many ways it doesn't matter. This is basically a whole circle of different colors, and every spoke represents something, whether it's anger, compassion, femininity, trust. I'm just reading out a few of these things. And as you see, each different part of the spoke shows a different culture. And there is absolutely nothing here which is consistently the same across all of them. Maybe if you look kind of in the top right, if I point to it there, 35, that's good luck. And you can see that alternates between green for good luck in some cultures and red for good luck in others. It really is a minefield. Now, you might also think about men and women, or male and female. And one of the things that we might have done for many years, or the first thing you may think of doing, is blue and pink. We might think, right, okay, blue for men, pink for women. If I was to put that, and I did when I started off, if I was to put that into a visualization, I wouldn't even feel like I needed a legend. I would think the association would be so strong. But is that an association that people want these days? Is it a bit more, is it a bit cliched? Is it a bit stereotypical? And this is a page from a blog that was done a few years ago by Lisa Charlotte Ross, as she was then, Lisa Charlotte Muth, as she is now, who works for Data Wrapper. And all of her work is amazing. And she took a look at this. She analyzed at the time some high profile data journalism and looked, all these on the left-hand side were using pretty much blue and red and blue and pink. All these on the right-hand side, which I think is about as many of them, were using something completely different. So they were deliberately rallying against that. So there wasn't even a trend. Personally, I would usually go for something on the right-hand side. That's my preference. I like to move away from blue and pink. But at the time, there was no sort of considered opinion as to what the right thing should be. And you'll notice I call my book Questions in Dataviz. I don't call it Answers in Dataviz. There aren't many answers really, but there's just lots of things that you might need to think about if you want to think about something a little bit more different or unconventional or sort of outside of the box. And I gave this talk in Birmingham in England a couple of months ago, and a lady came up to me afterwards and she was ever so disappointed. She said, well, I actually quite like being pink. I don't mind doing blue and pink in my charts. Are you saying I have to change? To which I'm saying, no, absolutely not. I'm just saying, had you thought of this? Bearing this in mind, what do you think still works best for you and the people who look at your charts? It might still be blue and pink, but it's just the awareness of so many things that you can think about. Sometimes, though, you just have to break all the rules. This is a visualization I did just looking at songs from my favorite band, and I had to keep the same color palette because I did lots of different visualizations. And I chose an album with 19 songs, and I need to have 19 colors in my color palette. So I had to break the rules. I had to not care. I broke lots of other rules. I did a bubble chart. You should never do a bubble chart, but I did it and I loved it and people loved it. So sometimes you just have to think, I'm doing a kind of chart where I can't consider all the rules because I'm just going to have to break some of them. So I'm just going to have to go with something that looks kind of fun and impactful and doesn't really matter. And similarly, here's a visualization about the London Underground and all the different lines on the tube map. And much as you see on many sort of transit maps, you can't change these colors. You can't think, well, I want something pastel, or I want something that doesn't use more than 7 colors. You just have to use the colors that are entrenched in people's mind to use them. And that, that kind of will override any other consideration as well, in my opinion. So that was my color talk. Lots to think about in color. And as I say, you learn certain things, but you just keep coming across other examples which make you think, what should I be doing here? And my next question is something that doesn't come up very often at all, which is why it moves to the next question, the next section, which is why visualize using triangles. And And it also came from the fact that last year, or it was around about when I was writing the book, there was a couple of quite high-profile visualizations that people were turning their heads at, and they had triangles in, and you would think, well, you don't see them very often. Triangles, I mean, they can be right-angled, equilateral scaling. It's not like circles, which are always going to look the same shape. And with something like that, what are you even measuring? Are you measuring the area? Well, that could be different for all of them. Are you measuring the height of one of the sides, or one of the longer sides, or from the base to the top? They're all going to give you different things, different analytical measures. So there's downsides already to triangles. This was something that Steve Wexler, who wrote the big book of dashboards and the big picture, he put out this test, and he was looking at bars and circles here, but it's a similar sort of thing as to how difficult it is to estimate exact area. If you look at the top one there, the circle, if F is 100, what's G? Well, all right, that was the correct range, but how many people got it? 39% of people got the right range. I took this test, I got it wrong. In the bar, 77% of people got the right range, including myself. With a bar, it's that much easier. So if you're trying to estimate area, it's not easy. Here's an example. What percentage of the full triangle is the dark blue section? Now, you guys aren't in the room with me here, so I can't sort of make this interactive and ask. But when I do ask this question, people don't usually get it right, or it can take a while and it can be quite deceptive. And I know I wouldn't guess the right answer. I'll give you, I'll let you think what the answer is in your head. And now I'm going to show you this. And if we see this triangle right there, that's exactly the same triangle. And if I was to ask you that, show you this map and ask you the question, you tell me it's 35% because it's annotated. So anything where we have difficulty in perceiving the area or comparing it, if you put annotation and you actually put the mark there, you're instantly getting rid of that difficulty. So throughout this, wherever there are some of the major reservoirs, we actually point out what the numbers are. I should give credit to this. This is from the Washington Post, and it was a great example of showing how dry all the lakes and reservoirs were in California. And the reason I love it is, all right, it might be difficult to see exactly how dry, but if we were to drive past the reservoir and see it down at that kind of level, we would think, crikey, that's dry. We would know. And it's just the triangle in itself just looks like it's carving through a river valley like that. And it's just has a better, well, not a better, but I think it has a really good metaphor to help you understand. So that's your trade-off, if you like, with the difficulty of estimating an area of a triangle.
Hey, Neil.
Hi there.
I'm going to exercise my executive privilege and ask you a question now instead of waiting to the end, specifically to that chart, if you don't mind flipping back.
Yes.
The levels of the reservoir, are you indicating that as percentage of the area of the whole triangle, or are you looking at it as a level if you were to take a line, straight from the base of the triangle to the apex?
Right.
Where it was like maximum level versus current level.
Right. We're really looking at the total of the area. And that's what makes it difficult to estimate, because, I mean, you or I would probably look at that, and if we were looking at just from base to height or along the line, we would probably say, well, that's a bit more than 50%. As it happens, because it's area, it's it is less full than that. But that's realistically an approximation to the shape. So we're actually we're pointing by putting these annotations in, we're helping our readers understand, well, we're looking at the area, the cross-sectional area, and we're giving some of the key amounts. And it might, it might sort of fool the eye somewhat, but by giving that annotation, we make it clear. So yes, in this case, we're trying to judge the percentage of area, or we're, in this case, we're actually denoting and annotating and making that clear for the reader.
And the underlying data is in volume, percentage of volume.
Yes, I would say the underlying data is percentage of volume, but we think of a two-dimensional shape as being the cross section of the volume. So I guess we're imagining the reservoir itself is a prism, if you like. I mean, I don't, I haven't designed this, but that's how I interpret it, and I think with the help that it gives the readers, it's really useful. And in some ways, the main thing to take from this is every single reservoir in California is running empty, some by 60%, some by 20%. I don't think it's crucial that you sort of read and pay attention to every one of them, but the overall size and the proportions it gives just sort of tells you that story. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one, and this we've seen this a lot. This is since won Information is Beautiful award as well. This is by Christina Sush from Hungary, and these just really captured people's attention. She did this in a number of different sports, and she just showed how the scores in particular sports matches, in this case it was UEFA 2020, which was soccer. She showed how they sort of built up one by one, and the resultant shape was a triangle. Triangle didn't mean anything in particular, but it was a resultant shape, and it was a really sort of fun geographical way to look at it. And I actually met Christina in Budapest a couple of months ago, and she gave a talk, and she said so many people just sent me a message and said, do this sport. And so, she had so many requests on her hand. I was similar. I said to Christina, can I copy it? But don't worry, I want to do it myself. I want to see if I can do it in Tableau. And I built it for curling, Olympic curling. Again, where we just sort of see how the score alternates, how it's built up, and the resulting view is fun, it's colorful, it's geometric, and it's triangles. And that's I don't want to show anything more than that, other than to give the overall build-up of the scores. And I looked at other things with triangles. On the left here from Scientific American was a visualization by Sonia Kuipers, who I very much admire. So again, I approached her and said, well, can I replicate something like this? And the difficulty, again, we're looking perhaps at sort of percentages with triangles, which is hard to see, but they're nicely labeled. And we get the trade-off of the fact that we have something that's quite striking. The geometry and the angles make you look. And so long as you can compare one to the other, then that makes a lot of our visualizing easier. So I went and did something similar. I had some metrics from a whole lot of different countries from a Viz for Social Good project, where I wanted to look at contraception choices for women. And I just thought it would make a fun and engaging way of comparing across countries like that, using that triangle motif in the middle. And sometimes we're not talking about a triangle mark, but we're talking about the way we organize our tables, or the structure of our visualizations. They kind of have to be triangle. If I look at this is a mileage chart between different cities in the UK. There is absolutely no need for the top right section of this visualization, because the driving distance from, let's say, Edinburgh to Leeds is exactly the same as from Leeds to Edinburgh. We don't need that top right bit. We would just see exactly the same numbers repeated. So that gives you a triangle structured visualization. And I had to go at something a lot more complex, but again, it had to be triangle structured. I was looking at a comparison of buying price to selling price. And buying price is always going to be in a year before selling price. It can't be the other way around. There is no need to have any data in the top right. So my decision based on that was to use this top right to have some annotation to make sure my legend was there, my titles, my headlines, and my explanations. So the fact that I was forced into a triangular shape, I used my advantage to make sure that I didn't leave that top right bit sort of hanging blank and white. And then as I was doing this research, I was contacted by Zan Armstrong, who's a visualization designer. And she said, well, actually, the field that I'm in, we love triangle visualizations. In metal science, so they use them all the time. And it's a perfect way, a ternary chart, these would be called, of looking at compositions of 3 different things at once, all of which add up to 100%. Now, you or I looking at this might be a little bit sort of, well, I could look at it and I would say, this is the composition of three metals, cobalt, tin, and tantalum, and the color shows the amount of whatever that alpha 3.2 EV means. I don't know what it means, but the scientists that she designed it for did know what it meant, and they see these all the time, so they can use their skill to compare the top to the second to the third and the difference between them. And because this is a stock chart type used in metallurgy and metal science, then it's something that they see all the time, and they're able to recognize the differences in the colors and the patterns. I then moved on. I wanted to do a visualization. There was a challenge to look at the first 3,500 members of the Data Visualization Society a couple of years ago. So there's actually 3,000 plus triangles here. And what started out as a radar chart with just three metrics to it, like that, ends up by definition as a triangle. So you can look at a triangle again as a radar chart with just three numbers. It gives you a triangle. And I had a lot of fun with this because you're not going to get a great amount of analysis from analytical value from just seeing one of those three triangles. It's difficult to tell the difference between the different shapes and see, well, these are all how people self-evaluated themselves on different metrics. But what you can see, and again, I pulled some color encoding in, as you can see from the top right there, just simply from where they were geographically, you can just start to see the similarities and the differences. And once I made the decision just to overlap them, I thought, well, people aren't going to see much analysis in here anyway. But by overlapping them, it started to look like a forest, and every triangle started to look like a tree, and the whole thing just looked like a much closer community. And suddenly that gave me the metaphor that I was interested in. We have a whole community. If you're really interested, you can look at the data behind it, you can hover over and you can see what each of the 3 points on every member means. But sometimes, you know, a triangle will give you a metaphor that you won't get necessarily from a different shape. So that's sort of the end of my triangle section. And again, it was it was so much fun to look into the different ways that people use triangles, either in shapes or in marks or in forms. And it just, I hope it sort of inspired people to think, well, yeah, maybe there's different shapes I can think of. Maybe I don't just have to go for the standard way from straight out of the box. All right, my third chapter from the more, well, I say from the more advanced question, from the idea questions. So this was a question which actually leads to a lot of the things that I like to do, which is, why do I visualize using flowers? And I'm just going to sort of revert to something I love putting this in my Tableau talks, really, which is really just to remind me, to remind people how you can use Tableau. I don't know if you guys recognize this well-known piece of art. It's very sort of geometric, and if you've seen it, you might think, well, actually, maybe I could do that. That looks a bit like a tree map. And it's by Mondrian. It's 100 years old, and it's actually called Tableau number 1, which is a nice coincidence, but that's what he named it. And if you actually think of what Tableau means, you look at the dictionary definition online in English, right? You talk about a tableau as being a picture, a scene. So we talk about sort of describing our data and sort of telling stories with it, a striking scene. And if you look about what it means in French as well, because it's a French word, a tableau is a board. We think of it as a drawing board. So really, I mean, Tableau, it's your blank canvas, it's your drawing board in order to create a scene. That's what you do with Tableau. And that's why I love to, basically, it went back to one of the first talks I saw on Tableau, which Andy Kriebel gave, which was, if you can draw it, then you can create it in Tableau. Or even better still, if you can just if you can create it with dots and lines, then that's all Tableau needs. So onto flowers. This was by Yvette Kovac and her colleague Isvan Koronpoy. She made this beautiful grid of a petal chart, which showed male and female representation in tech companies. And I love this. It blew me away. It just showed me how you could represent using something that's using a completely different symbol, and how you could still make these comparisons across all the different companies like that. And it was so eye-catching. It was so beautifully done. And it sort of planted the seed, if you like, no pun intended, of what you might be able to do as sort of flower style visualizations. This is a sort of flower style visualization I tried. Again, this is for Operation Fistula. And you'll see in the kind of things that I've done, and almost all of this has been done in sort of personal projects that you can do in the community. It's been a real mix and match between fun, meaningless data like football scores and data for good, data from charity and non-profit data sets. This came from Operation Fistula, who do great work making sort of life-altering procedures for women, allowing them to have a much better quality of life in different countries in Africa. And I just tried to represent that by showing each of the women as an individual flower with a different color from their country, and the metaphor of improving life, really, from the ground upwards, and the sort of movement in the wind from left to right just showed how many additional years they were potentially adding to each of this woman's life, and I hope sort of gave the metaphor of growth and hope. But even if you take all that kind of stuff away and you're not interested in metaphor, what I love about visualizing as flowers is flowers are like scatter plots, but they're like sort of scatter plots plus, if you like. So in a scatter plot, you might have, if you just consider perhaps the center of the flower, you're encoding the size of what you're plotting. You can encode with color, you can encode with position, X and Y, and maybe the shape of what you're trying to encode, sorry, the shape of what you're plotting as well. So scatter plots are brilliant because there's so many different things you can encode. But then if you think of flowers, you've got a scatter plot, plus you have petals, and these petals all have different positions, they all have different shapes, they all have different colors as well. So the center and the petal can be different colors. You can even encode the stalk, which I've done on this example here. And you know, your possibilities, well, they're not endless, but they're sort of at least doubled in some of the kind of things that you can do. This one here on the right, I was visualizing the Premier League football teams in the UK last year or the year before. That's literally all I'm doing is I'm looking and seeing what the different squads are and encoding them with different colors. And I even put in the stalk was like a line graph of each of the teams' league performance. So there was all sorts of things hidden away in there. Another example, it's not quite flowers, but it's sort of similar. And again, it's just a geometric visualization. And I love to do them. And sometimes they're just designed to be artistic. I don't mind that you can't see what's going on. I don't mind that the reader has to do the work. The reader, you know, might have to go and see the legend and think, right, what do all these colors mean? You can keep them low profile or somewhere else. For goodness sake, don't send these to board meetings. Don't send them to your boss and say, here's the latest sales figures. But if you want something that might look cool on somebody's wall, or that might sort of experiment with geography and art and something that you can do. I mean, listen to how excited I am. I'm a mathematician and I found Tableau and I can start to do stuff like this. So this is why I sort of encourage it. Always think who your audience is. And if your audience is, you know, someone who might aesthetically like this, what it is, then, you know, the world is your oyster. So back to flowers, back to these Premier League squads. I enjoyed this because as soon as I pasted this into PowerPoint to do a presentation on a couple of years ago, the alt text, which comes up automatically, it says a group of colorful flowers. And I thought, yes, I've fooled Tableau. I know these aren't colorful flowers. These are curves and ellipses, and I've colored them in and I've drawn line charts. But, you know, you can emulate whatever you like, and you can use, you know, elements of data visualization to make, you know, I make PowerPoint think that they look like a group of colorful flowers. I've talked for long enough. I don't really want to go into the how to do some of these flowers, other than just to really sort of go through it at sort of basic level, which is you're going to have to go back to trigonometry, which might sort of, you know, It might take you back to school and some of the schoolboy or schoolgirl maths that you did. But, you know, so much of this is out there and you can Google it and you can find out, or you can see what others have done. So it's a matter of just, if you want to know how to plot something and you can't remember, then just look out there and Tableau will do it. Tableau has all these functions. So anything that you're doing around in a circle, you just need to remember your sine and cos. And again, I don't look at this in detail, but other than to say, very often the thing to do is just join in a shapes file. So the only column that's interesting there is on the left there, where I just have join and then 1 for everything. So if each row in my data set has a 1, and then this join column means, in this case, I've decided I want 40 copies of something, which I'll do the calculations for, or I'll bring them in from Tableau, but I want 40 copies, so I can make 40 dots for each data point and ask Tableau to to join the dots and color them in. And that's just it, sort of looking a little bit closer. So you can pull in any calculations you want, or you can get Tableau to do them. I have some shortcuts for petals. I don't know how to do an ellipse. I do know how to do a circle though. So that's actually just a circle, but squashed on screen so that it looks like a petal. So don't think you always have to do everything sort of exactly right, because you can always use the dimensions of your charts to squeeze something one way or the other. With this, I just wanted to show that once you've sort of done all your petals, I was then left with the thing, oh, how do I rotate them? I need everything to sort of be rotated so it looks the right place around a circle. But once again, this sort of came straight from Wikipedia. And this, I knew I'd done this 30 years ago at school or at college, but I couldn't remember. But as soon as you've got your Tableau to work out your where things are, if you need to do another calculation to make it look right, you can just pull that in and put that into more calculated fields. And this is exactly what I've done here. Put them into calculated fields, which is just the equivalent of that equation we saw on the page before. And you can get something that starts to look like a flower. And then once you put it into a polygon and you make sure you color them in and you position them correctly on your dashboard, then all of a sudden you can start to get your flowers appearing. And I said draw it to a close there, really, because you know, there's so many different things you can do. But to summarize, it's all about questioning. To start with, question your basic principles, which you absolutely need to apply. But what could you do differently? What had you not thought of? What could you just bend or break or ignore? And then think about questions you might not have thought before. Never thought about doing a triangle for this. Would my reservoirs look good as triangles instead of squares or circles? You know, could I use a triangular formation here? And then just sometimes think of a brand new idea or emulate something that you've seen and see, I wonder if I can do that in Tableau. What are the pros and cons? What's my audience? Will this be okay? And whenever you do this, when you flex your creative muscle, chances are you might well learn something that you can then bring back to your day job. You know, you might use level of detail in a way that you'd never thought of before, that you can actually bring back into your day job. That's really going to help you there. And so I've always said Tableau is your blank canvas. I've changed it just slightly there. It's your blank canvas of graph paper, because all you need to be able to do is just sort of point and plot and draw dots and have creative idea, and Tableau will do the rest. You know, all the creativity you think of comes from all the questions that you might sort of apply. And, you know, as your creativity and your skills increase, and I think your fun increases as well. And I've had so much fun with Tableau since the moment I picked it up. And that's really what all the book's about. You know, how did I go from learning a few things and doing some basics at work in Tableau to having fun? And I hope you can do the same. So that's it. It's only fair that because it's questions in dataviz, I can answer any questions that you have on the book.
Well, thanks, Neil. That was very awesome and insightful too. There's a lot of, I mean, I hadn't thought of some of those concepts you used and the unique way you're using them. I guess before we turn it over to Homer, I had a question. Sort of, you know, when you go designing these dashboards, and they're amazing. Like, what's your process from start to finish? Like, you have a concept and then you sort of graph it out on paper first, or like, and then you start prepping the data. Like, how do you go about it?
Well, I think often because a lot of these are personal projects, I do things the wrong way around. And I talk about this in the book, but it's not something that you should do. I let the design drive the data. And you have to be absolutely sure that you're okay to do that, because that's not really kind of what you should do. But if it's a project and you want to try design, then think of the design, look at it and think, no, how can I, what kind of metrics, what kind of data would fit that really nicely? And then maybe then just sort of search for the data and see if you can try and fit it. Now, that doesn't work on any brief other than something that you're doing for your own benefit and your own interest. But that's very often the process that I go through. So the design can either be something I've thought of. It's 9 times out of 10, if not more, I've usually, I would say, stolen the idea, but I've come up with the idea inspired by someone else. And I might have seen someone do something not in Tableau and thought, can I do something similar in Tableau? Or there was a time when, I thought I got a lot of inspiration from album covers or from geometric designs, I would see, or something like that. So I think, okay, that's the design. The design has been thought of for me. Can I do something similar to that in Tableau? Where shall I start? What data would fit that quite nicely? So it's an interesting way of flipping things around, but it's something that I do enjoy doing.
Gotcha. Yeah. So start with almost like the concept in a sense,
Yeah,
and work backwards. Oh, that's cool. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And sometimes you kind of meet in the middle.
Right. Cool. Well, Homer, I'll turn over to you. Do you have a question? Do we have any questions that came in?
Yeah, we do have a question that Lauren Rivers asked. Neil, referring back to the chart that had the curling team scoring, Lauren's curious about how you actually algorithmically built that chart.
The short answer is I'm not sure I can remember, but almost all charts that I do, or the kind of thing that I've settled on, which I know works for most of my charts and probably did for that, is and the clue is in the sort of graph paper there, is I create things and sort of translate them to X and Y almost. So I sort of for each individual curling chart or whatever it was, I think where do I want my X to be and where do I want my Y to be? And so thinking about it, I think probably for each goal or for each point, I pulled in 2 data points. So one for the start score and then one for the finish score. And then for the other team, I was doing the same thing, but perhaps on a, with X further over to the left. And what's the start score? What's the finish score? And then just by drawing, I let Tableau do the rest and fill in the polygons. And that way you can build it up. And then whenever I do anything in a grid, very often it's then just, you do it for one game first. And then you think, all right, so where do I want to place each of the matches on my screen? And then I would just sort of multiply each of them out by a different multiplier, depending on the name of depending on the number of the match, that kind of thing. So it's work on one game first, and then sort of move it out, and then determine how many points do I need, how many physical points do I need to draw a line between to represent one data point. So thinking about it in the triangles example, I think it's probably just 2, a start and a finish. And then by having, and this probably explains how a triangle came out, because each time there's a goal, they're not called goals in curling, are they? But whatever, a point, one team doesn't move and the other team goes up a certain number of points. So the team that doesn't move stays there. The team that does goes from that point to that point. Then you have 3, you color them in and you have a triangle. But again, so it was figuring out how to do it in Tableau, but it was taking the idea from another designer and sending her a message and saying, I love your work, please, do you mind if I try it on a different sport, in a different setting and a different tool? And yes, and she was more than happy for me to do that.
So you're saying did you have the exact sequence of point scoring of the 2 teams for every game?
Yes, I did.
So
I managed to find that on
so you could draw a line up and then a line over and then back to show exactly in which order points were scored.
That's right. And often in these cases, once you have an idea, sometimes you have the data, sometimes you don't. And I'm not a great data wrangler. I never learned Alteryx and some of these other things, and so a lot of the data skills I have are repetitive. They're manual. They're done in Excel, or I might sort of copy and paste stuff, or sort of might be looking up articles and taking them from Wikipedia. So it sort of behoves you to be doing it on a fun project with a fun data set. Now, I love sports, and that's fine. So I quite got into curling in that Olympics. So I didn't mind going through each of them and taking the scores. And I can't remember how I did it, but maybe sort of copying and pasting each individual one. And, that's something I could do on a Sunday afternoon on my laptop watching, whatever I was watching. So there's quite a variety of time in preparing the data for something like this. But if it's for something that you're going to enjoy, and if it's on a topic that you enjoy as well, then then it's a win-win situation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate the comment you made about starting with the end result and then finding the data to support it. Back when I was, studying to be an electrical engineer, we called that first draw your curve, then plot your points.
Right. Yeah. That's almost exactly the process that I do, and it's just appreciating that for something creative, that's perfectly okay. For results that you want to give to your director, that's absolutely not okay.
There might be a problem with that.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we
Homer,
did
do
it, but
have
we
another
didn't
question?
brag about it.
Right.
Do we have any other questions?
I have no other questions at this time. Do you, Chris?
Yeah, I had a question. Maybe two. One around accessibility. Is there a color palette you prefer for maybe thresholding or something like that, or do you just, as long as it's not specific, like maybe red green or something like that, you just avoid, or is there maybe one you go to more frequently than others?
It's probably not one I go to more frequently than others. In personal projects, I don't know. Maybe I break some more of the rules because I like being colorful and I like being striking. But
Right.
at work, I try and follow all the rules. And yeah, in terms of accessibility, I actually think your sort of Tableau default blue and orange is a good start. Anything that avoids those kind of reds and greens. Even at work, we have a sort of default palette that if someone insists on reds and greens, there are ways around it by having different intensities of red and green, so that it does get around some colorblind things like that. But yes, as I say, in my work setting at JLL, and you have so many great JLL people on here, and there's more to come. We do stick to a very predefined palette, which is has been designed with accessibility in mind.
That's great.
And yeah, so I think basically just sort of stick to that. Don't try and don't try and reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, that makes sense. Don't get too fancy with it. Yeah, I asked this question, but maybe I'll ask it in two parts. So you have a favorite like visualization type, but I guess in your case, one on your creative projects and maybe one on your maybe at work projects, I guess, that you go to,
Yeah, it's hard to sort of define a favorite type. One thing I like, one thing I love a small multiple grid, and I think there's anything, if you can do anything once, I love doing it 100 times, putting it in a 10 by 10 grid. So anything that you've created that you can see how it differs and how it stays the same. I just think I get a lot of enjoyment from that. And it wasn't until I sort of started compiling the book that I realized, wow, I do a lot of grids, don't I? I don't think I realized how many I do. So I really love that. I love anything that sort of disaggregates the data and shows everything individually. At work, I do like to bring in a grid if possible, but I mean it's not really often all that possible. So I think in a professional, I don't know, in a professional setting, I wouldn't say I have a favorite, but I do have an appreciation of the fact that, you know, I'm almost Jekyll and Hyde. You shouldn't be bringing in Sankey charts or anything like that. And sometimes people know that I'm here and they know the kind of stuff that I do. And I might be thinking, oh, Neil, I've just learned how to do a Sankey chart. Wouldn't that be great here? And I just think, I don't think you should. And sometimes you can. I think doing fun stuff like this sort of opens my eyes sometimes to the fact that maybe I can just bring in something a little bit different. You know, there's not a rule that says everything has to be a bar chart. You know, you can still have some creativity within it. Maybe not the same kind of creativity that I like to use, but I think anything that opens up your mind that says, okay, there's 6 different chart types we could use here, and there's probably pros and cons to all of them. You know, let's pick one and run with that. So I feel like I like to be creative, but I appreciate there's a time and a place. And I haven't really answered your question because there's probably no chart type that I get particularly excited about in a professional context.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there's just some standard ones that everybody goes with. So no, that's totally fair. Well,
there's charts like, I'd love to do a Marimekko chart at work or something like that. I still think that's a kind of chart which it absolutely works on the right data set. I haven't had the right data set yet, and I think, you know, it would actually work. And I've done a Sankey chart in a professional capacity before, which was absolutely the right thing to do. But I've only found one time to do it. So I have the open mindset, but you know, I can't say that that's my favorite chart to do it with, because, you know, 99 times out of 100 it's the wrong chart to use. So.
Right. Well, you got to know your audience too, how they can handle it. So,
of course.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Neil. I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a little late in the evening for you over there, so thank you for taking time out of your spare time. Yeah, and it's been a joy to have you. Everyone, let's give a virtual round of applause for Neil here, and be sure to check out his book, Questions in Dataviz. It's available on Amazon. I think I saw it on Barnes and Noble too. So you guys check it out. And Neil, thank you, and I look forward to maybe bumping into you at TC. So
I hope so.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. All right, bye. Yeah, everyone. So our next session is going to be our networking breakout session. We're going to go ahead and, as usual, have a breakout room here in Zoom. For those that aren't familiar, you just sort of go ahead and look down below, and there'll be a little breakout room button, and you can go ahead and join the room that is available. There will be one called Ask Anyone Anything. Go ahead and open that now. So Homer and I will be the MCs. If you'd like to join that room, go